Anxiety, I don't think, is necessarily a bad thing. Anxiety is there to serve you on some level. It's often to highlight what you're not doing. If you have clear goals, you're often actually very much less anxious because you know you're taking the right next action towards achieving those things.
She discovered the secrets of high-performance health and the powers of biohacking. She's now gone on to help thousands of women regain their health. Founder of the BioSyncing Program, my friend all the way from the UK, Miss Angela Foster.
The issue with cheap dopamine hits is they get you looking for them all day long. It's just like if you start your day with sugary, high-fat food, you're going to crave that pretty much for the most of the day. It's setting the tone for the day. The only opinion you really care about, truly, is your opinion of yourself.
Yeah.
And so I think it all really starts with yourself. And that's what I found from my journey with depression.
If you were to go back to your 18-year-old self and give her 30 seconds of advice, what would it be?
It would be to...
Alrighty guys, welcome back to the Dream Out Loud podcast. And today's guest is an award-winning nutritionist, health and performance coach, a speaker, and is the host of the top-rated global podcast, High Performance Health. After undergoing a serious illness in 2014 while working long and high-pressured hours in corporate, struggling to find all the right information on how to improve her health, she was left feeling overwhelmed with all the information. But through countless hours of research, she discovered the secrets of high-performance health and the powers of biohacking and used it to rebuild her physical, mental, and spiritual health. She has now gone on to help thousands of women regain their health and achieve high-performance results without burning themselves out. So please help me welcome the woman who went from working in the newsagent store at 16 years old to now the founder of the BioSyncing Program, where she helps high performers achieve optimal peak health. My friend all the way from the UK, Miss Angela Foster.
Hey Morgan, how are you? It's great to be here.
Very good. I'm super excited to talk to you because this is a topic that I'm wanting to bring in a little bit more into the whole realm of everything that we sort of teach people on here, because it's an extremely, like, one thing I've done for the last 8 years of my life is build my health from a place of prevention versus having to cure the problem. So I like when I sort of look at everything you're doing and what you teach, and I'm just really excited to sort of dive into this and give these people some practical things that they can put into their life to improve their health while achieving massive results. Because I truly believe you can do both. You don't have to have one or the other. So I'm excited. I want to first ask you, tell everybody, what is biohacking?
Biohacking is really where you seek to change your internal and external environment, right, for optimizing your health, essentially. So I guess when I think of women, the reason I developed biosyncing is it feels so much more intuitive. I think rather than kind of hacking into your biology, if you like, let's sync with it. So syncing with your female physiology, syncing with your goals and dreams, your life stage, where you are, things like your genetics, your chronotype. And so, yeah, it incorporates elements of biohacking. But essentially it's really about, what I speak about is about creating optimal health as the foundation for high performance. Because, in my own journey from those heady days as a newsagent person, right, in the little corner shop, and Jake, it was a fun intro that you had there. Basically, I had an experience with burnout in my days just after, when I was practicing as a corporate lawyer, just after having my children. And I had sort of created two worlds, one where I'd achieved massive performance, right? I'd made partnership at 8 months pregnant. I was flying, I was doing super well, running global deals. I had 3 kids, but I was really burnt out and struggled for a long, long time with clinical depression. And then separately to that, when I eventually, we can talk about that journey there if you want to, but then separately, when I got my health back on track, I was fully focused on health. I was in a fortunate position where at that time I didn't need to work. I was just totally focused on my health. And I was like, these two worlds have got to come together in one form or another, right? They have to. You can't just have high performance, you just burn yourself out crazy and then focus on your health and that's all you do all day. And that's when I really started to develop this thinking and realization that health really is the foundation of sustained high performance. If you want longevity in business and in life, and your relationships, then I think health needs to be the bottom of that pyramid.
What's your opinion, or what's your view then, I guess, on the whole hustle culture in the world? Like, it's like you open up social media these days and you see every single Instagram influencer, the entrepreneur influencer, it seems like they're promoting a life of, you don't have to sleep, grind it out, hustle. Do you think this is something that's really sort of playing a role? Like, is this shaping society in the wrong way? Or can you sort of have that attitude and do it healthily? I'd sort of just like to know your kind of opinion or view on all that.
I think that you can push very hard for a period of time. And I think sometimes, and you probably know this as an entrepreneur, there are times when you need to work in sprints, right? And then you need to recover. But I think that business, in a broader sense, is more of a marathon than a sprint as the whole. And it takes time. And I think that the stronger the foundation, the stronger the results will be over that time, and they can really compound. And I think that this sort of hustle and grind, there's sort of two, it's interesting that you say that, because there's two things I see on social. One is where you still hustle, got to work really hard, forget about sleep and sleep when you're dead, and totally neglecting of health, which is kind of a little bit akin to the world of corporate law. And then there's this whole other bank of influences that's like, just sort of law of attraction based. And if you can visualize it, you can have it, if you can see it in your mind, you can hold it in your hands type thing, which I originally stems from Bob Proctor, but he was all about taking action. It was never about just sitting on the sofa and having these big dreams. So I think it's kind of like, as with most things on social, there's a polarization, right? And the truth lies somewhere in the middle, right? It is about visualizing and things like that, as you know, but it's about taking massive action. But I think we have to understand that if we take massive action for a concentrated time, where we are sort of to a degree risking our health, or we're certainly putting it on the back burner, then we may be met with a period of inaction, because actually you've got to be able to maintain that energy. And everything is vibration, as you know. So I think that I don't like the word balance particularly, but I think we need to kind of hit that middle somewhere where we're achieving both things. And I believe that's the smart way. I also think that hustle culture can be at risk to creativity, because I actually think you need a little bit of time and space around you to truly be creative and be different and come up with solutions that really work for people. And to do that, you've got to access flow state, and you've got to be connected to yourself. And I think that if you're just hustling and grinding all the time, there's a risk that the quality goes down.
Al, talk to us about flow state. What is flow state and how do we access that?
So most people are going to be familiar when they've really felt in flow. You generally will feel at one with the activity that you're doing. And if you see someone in flow, it's quite beautiful to watch. When I think of flow, the person that comes to mind that everyone will know is Roger Federer. When you watch him play tennis, he's retired now, but it was so different to seeing a lot of the other pros playing, right? He just seemed at one with the ball. He almost kind of dances on court. There's an effortlessness to it. And I think that when you're in a flow state, you have access to higher levels of creativity because you become at one with the activity. Your concept of time falls away. That's when you really, truly just get lost in doing something. And you can get amazing results in whatever pursuit, whether that's an athletic pursuit or whether it is in your business, in life. If you're writing, for example, creating really quality content. I think often we hope that we can access flow all of the time. I don't think that's true. And I think that, even the greats probably are accessing flow maybe 15% of the time. But I think the quality that is there when you're in a flow state and just the feeling, because all these neurochemicals come together. And Stephen Kotler, who's been on my show, talks about it, where you've got things like dopamine and just the right levels of these neurochemicals, right? Of dopamine and anandamide and all these different neurochemicals that are kind of combining at the right amounts together to help you access those higher levels of thinking. But there is usually a struggle phase before you can get into flow. And there needs to be a release in order to do it. And I think where we're so distracted all the time, a lot of people are just experiencing that struggle phase, right? So they're kind of like feeling like they've got to get down to it. And then I'll just check this, I'll just check my email, I'll just do this. You're always in the struggle phase. And you've got to actually release that to then enter into flow and be free of distraction as well. So I think making sure that you don't lose creativity is fundamental in my experience to really true success. But I also think that if you want to have success over the long haul, then optimizing your health, and by that I mean mind, body, spirit health, is really key.
What's worked really good for me is I will put my phone on airplane mode, because it's actually on do not disturb all day long. So literally I just can't be disturbed. I can't get phone calls, I don't get notifications, and I started doing that just for the morning period, right? My morning routine stuff. And then it was just so good where I was like, you know what? I'm not going to turn it on at all. If people need me, they send me an email and then I get back to it. But I'm just not going to take phone calls anymore. It's so hard to actually get access to me by my phone or text or anything. I just refuse to it. And that's worked so good for me. And then what I'll actually do, I'll put on deep focus music. I put on my speaker behind me, and I make sure the next 2 or 3 hours I've actually got clear work. I'm like, so what am I actually doing in this block? And I'm just going to do that. And when I've done that, the music's on, my phone's not there, so I can't just, not getting pinged or whatever. I am like a freight train. I just get shit done. I can get more done now in 3 or 4 hours than I used to get done an entire day, because I used to try to think I can multitask. I can do this, and it just doesn't work. I'm way more productive when I do a few of those things, but that's really helped me kind of get into a flow state. One of the things you mentioned, one of the guys you had on your podcast was talking about the different chemicals in our body. So I really want you to talk about this. So talk to us, what are the different major chemicals in our body? Like our dopamine and all of these things. What's their role they play? And how can we hack our bodies or, use biohacking to support so we can actually get more of those natural chemicals to help us perform better?
So obviously, I'm not like a neuroscientist, but I can definitely give you a kind of overview on this. So we've got dopamine, which is a big motivational chemical, right? It helps us, as you say, get shit done. And you can have the way you process dopamine, I'll come on to in a minute, because some of that's partly genetic. And then we have norepinephrine and epinephrine, otherwise known as adrenaline, noradrenaline. And here what we need is just enough, right, to get us going, get us excited, but not so much that we're now going to produce really high levels of cortisol. We're going to be producing some cortisol. And cortisol, everyone thinks, I don't want too high cortisol. Cortisol is important. Cortisol should be high in the morning. That's often why we can get our best work done in the morning, right? It's very motivational. It helps.
Cortisol's like when my stressed, cortisol is high, right?
Yeah, cortisol is a stress hormone, but it has its own rhythm, its own circadian rhythm, and it is the opposite to melatonin. They cannot both be high at the same time, so they actually have an inverse relationship. Which is why if you have high cortisol in the evening, it's going to be really difficult to sleep well. If you wake up during the middle of the night for whatever reason, and it could be any number of things that wake you up. If you kind of go to the bathroom, put on the lights and things like this, and cortisol starts getting going, it's going to be very difficult because, as I say, there's an inverse relationship between melatonin and cortisol. But in the morning, we want to have high cortisol. That's when we want to see that surge. And actually, if we look at people's saliva in the morning, we want to see a nice peak. But then it should kind of go up and come down across the day. A lot of people have a dysregulated cortisol rhythm. Many people actually, we find that it just doesn't get going enough in the morning, right? So it's kind of a bit flat, or it starts to go up and then it just sort of levels off. So they're not feeling that sense of vibrancy and vitality that they want to actually start and go about their day. And then sometimes what we can see is it sort of flat lines in the afternoon, but it'll start to come back up again in the evening. So when we're looking at accessing these highly productive states, what we want is a certain amount of cortisol to help with that, and a certain amount of adrenaline, noradrenaline. Too much, and actually it's going to just lead to more fear and anxiety, which is going to be counterproductive, right? So it's about getting these just in the right doses. Anandamide's another one, and it can kind of help with different connections. Oxytocin's more kind of from love, and we're getting all of these coming together in dopamine and serotonin, and that's when you sort of hit that flow, that kind of feeling of being at one with everything. With dopamine, it's an interesting one because what I see when I look at people's genetics is we process dopamine differently. there's a gene known as the COMT gene, and you could have a slow or a fast COMT. If you're somebody who has a slower COMT gene, dopamine is probably going to hang around a little bit longer for you, and that can actually lead towards anxiety. For people who are fast processors, they're going to need more motivation, right? And you might find yourself in this category. A lot of high performers are, where it's like, actually, I need to self-impose deadlines. I need to I need to have things scheduled to get things done. That's got to be there. Otherwise, time's very elastic, and more so for somebody who's like that. I think that when we look at, at brain health, it's really critical that we get our nutrition right, and that we eat well, and we don't do things that damage our brain. It's not just nutrition for our body, if you like. It's important for physical and mental health. And we can also use certain physical activities that will condition the mind better. So, there's been some research done around cold exposure, and that increases dopamine. So if you have some cold exposure in the morning, you might get a really nice peak of dopamine for sort of 2-3 hours afterwards, which is going to really help fuel that productivity.
Yeah, I think it's about...
Got some early morning cortisol.
I think it's about 400% increase in dopamine from a couple minutes of cold exposure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Huge. That's a classic biohack, right? That you can use. If you've got good cortisol rhythm. Now, good cortisol rhythm is going to come from circadian alignment, which we can talk about, and that's hugely important. And good sleep and light wake cycles and things. So you can use something like that. I think the issue is what we're conditioned to now, to pick up what you were saying about social media earlier, is that we are driven by distraction all of the time and cheap dopamine hits. And the issue with cheap dopamine hits is they get you looking for them all day long. It's just like if you start your day with sugary, high-fat food, you're going to crave that pretty much for the most of the day. It's setting the tone for the day. And that's why it's so risky to look at your phone in the morning. You're not just being driven by other people's priorities. You're also getting a dopamine hit. Did that content I put out, did it get liked? Did anyone send me a message? It could be even just a message on a WhatsApp, right? Oh, look, people are messaging me. And I'm absolutely the same as you. My phone is on do not disturb, because that's the way that I get work done. And most things you can then get back to people at a scheduled time, right? But we need to clear the distractions.
What's the problem with, so you said, so you're getting cheap dopamine. So somebody who wakes up in the morning, they get on their phone straight away. Apart from like I stopped doing this a very long time ago. It was one of the biggest things that completely changed my moods and just my overall productivity in the day, but how I felt about myself. It was amazing. My phone in airplane mode, I wake up and I don't touch it for the first 2 or 3 hours of the day. But for the people who do, they open up social media in the morning, they're addicted to that phone and they're getting that cheap dopamine. What else is really happening in their bodies? Like, why is that really a problem? Like, why should they really pay attention to actually be like, shit, I really shouldn't do that anymore. I should sleep my phone in airplane mode.
The thing with it is where it's kind of a cheap form. So when we're looking at dopamine, we've got extrinsic and we've got intrinsically generated. So when you're talking about like the cold shower, that has the element of cold is helping produce dopamine. But when you do hard things, you produce dopamine. That's why if you go and do an early morning workout, you're going to produce more dopamine. And what you've done there is you have put effort into something, and now you're feeling that internal reward system. And that's been shown, if you look at Andrew Huberman's work, that's been shown to last longer than extrinsic sources of dopamine, which is just a hit. Yeah. So it's like having that, it's like almost like having a sweet, right? Having a Haribo or something. It's never enough. You just get that little taste and you're like, I just want to have another one and another one and another one, or Pringles, right? You can't stop until you pop, because it's been created in a highly addictive way to stimulate your taste buds that you want more. And food companies are very, very good, at doing this. And they deliberately create the right amount of sugar and fat that the taste is just explosive. I mean, I interviewed somebody on this, a neuroscientist, and he ended up having to leave what he was doing because he was working for a big food manufacturer, and they were just getting children in the room and tasting these cookies. I won't name the company. And basically just seeing which one was the most addictive to groups of children. And they would use him to kind of assess that. And that would be the one that would be put on the shelves. Wow. So deliberately addictive, which is quite scary. And so it's the same thing with social media, right? You like that content, the algorithm's going to show you a whole bunch of more content like that. And then your brain goes to seek it. But you didn't do anything to achieve that. There was nothing hard. There was no effort put in. And so by putting your phone away, putting it to airplane, as you say, you're not allowing other things to steal your focus. You're allowing yourself to come with full focus to your activity and your priorities, but you're also now going to start to generate your own forms of these neurochemicals.
What's up, Dream Nation? Have you ever wondered how far ahead your life would have already been if you had got access to this type of content at a younger age? Look, this is why I need your help. I'm trying to build the #1 personal development platform out there to teach you guys the tips, tricks, and attitude of what it takes to live your dream life, and to bring the type of education that we all wish we had in school. This show only grows by word of mouth and new subscribers, so it would mean the world to me if you could smash that subscribe button right now, leave us a 5-star written review, or drop a comment below and share this episode with a friend. I would be forever grateful. All right, now let's get back into this episode. So the cheap dopamine hits are making it harder for us to actually achieve better natural levels throughout the day. So are you saying that if we're going after cheaper hits, is that why people may struggle to be motivated to do the things that they should be motivated to do?
I think in part, I think clear goals, as you know, is a very, very important part, because if you have clear goals and you have clarity, often, people, they talk about, I feel very anxious all the time. I've got anxiety. Anxiety, I don't think, is necessarily a bad thing. Anxiety is there to serve you on some level. It's often to highlight what you're not doing. And I think that if you have clear goals, you're often actually very much less anxious, because you're taking the right next action towards achieving those things. So I think clear goals play a part. But if you wake up, you don't really know where you're going. We were talking when you came on my show around people sort of running around in circles in a room. If they don't know where they're going, there's not a clear destination. That can lead to anxiety. It makes it harder to access these states. But also, if you just keep conditioning your mind, so you feel a bit anxious, you're not quite sure, or you feel in a bit of a mental funk that morning. So you're looking for something extrinsic to give you validation or give you that feeling. Now you're going to keep searching it. And it's a little bit like a compliment, right? Someone pays you a really nice compliment. You can live off that for a bit. But really, the only opinion you really care about, truly, is your opinion of yourself.
Yeah.
And so I think it all really starts with yourself. And that's what I found from my journey with depression and kind of...
You talk about the 7 S's. What is this? What are the 7 S's when it comes to biohacking our life?
The 7 S's.
I saw one of the things maybe it was just one of the things you posted. It was like sleep and soul, and there's a few things. Is that one of your things, or am I screwed that up?
Yeah, I think sometimes I'll talk about different ones, hacks for people in terms of, like, for example, like with 7 S's, I might talk about it in a fitness context. So for example, like what are the pillars that you need to fit to be all round? You need to to be all round fit, for example. So you need to sprint occasionally, you need to stretch, you need to do various things. But those are kind of when we get into more of the sort of the micro minutiae, the biggest pillars that I like people to think about, because before you can get there, right, and dive in, what does my fitness program really look like? And what do I need to do? Like, how much do I need to sprint, which helps with mitochondrial health and things like this, right? How much do I need to, how do I need to, all these things? I actually use an overarching protocol called SHIFT. And SHIFT is really about optimizing your sleep, your hormones, your insights, the way you feel your body, and the way you train your body and mind. And those 5 key pillars, we actually have a questionnaire, a biohacking quiz that people can take. And that will score you in each of those areas. And we'll send you a personalized report showing you like what your percentage is and how you can improve. Because those areas are the things that I found that really come together to optimize mind, body, and spirit. And you don't want to neglect any of them, but it's about finding, first of all, which thing do I most need to focus on first, and which one can be the domino for me, right? So there's usually one thing that is the first domino that when you push that one, it's going to put all the others in motion. For many people, that is sleep. Because actually, if you're not sleeping well, and, like we were saying earlier, people sort of think that they don't need to sleep and they can do that later. Actually, it's having a huge effect on not just these neurochemicals, on your hormones, on the way that you're eating, on your hunger, your satiety hormones, for example, what food you're driven to eat, whether or not you're going to exercise. And so that's why I kind of start with sleep, is because that has that domino effect. But for other people, it might be actually, I sleep really, really well, but I don't move my body at all. And I'm going to start at the back end with the T, with the training. But that's not just about, the T is about training your mind and your body. So we can dive into some of those if you like, but I think that's probably a better place.
So let's repeat them. So we've got sleep.
Hormones.
Sleep, hormones, yep.
Insights, which is what you can gather through a combination of wearable data, journaling, and also lab data.
Cool.
And then the next one is fuel. How are you going to fuel your body? And this is where you can use an acronym called FLOW, which is food, light, oxygen, and water. Because it's easy to think, I've just got to eat right. Actually, light has a massive impact on the health of our body. The way that we breathe has a huge impact. And also on our anxiety levels. And then hydrate. Water is really for hydration. And then the T is the training. How are we going to train our mind and our body for that physical and mental fitness?
Cool. Well, I'd love to talk about the fuel and the sleep. So considering we already talked about sleep, what are some things that you see, I guess, general people kind of screw up? Or are there any sort of general frames that like, these are the best times to sleep? We've got the whole 5 a.m. club. Because I think I realized this, I've gone through, I used to be, 5 a.m. club, I get up, blah, blah, blah. And then what I realized is I just fucking hate getting up at that time. I'm just not that guy. What I love is like 6:15. Sometimes I get up at 7. What I do, I get up now when I'm ready to get up. That's my thing now. But it's usually about 6 to 7 o'clock. And I used to be so hard on myself, like, 5 a.m. And what I realized was I'd wake up and already be doing things I don't want to do. And I get like, it's kind of like that, like you were saying before, not the balance, but I guess the integration. And I think what I've learned from is not listening to all the take the outside stuff that comes in, even take this, what comes in, but go, what works best for you? Because what I've realized is I still perform really well at nighttime, but I don't like the mornings. Well, I love the mornings, but you never see me on a early morning call or nothing before 10 o'clock. I wake up, I get ready, I do my morning routine, I'll have breakfast, I go to the gym, I'll go outside, I see some sun. And then when I'm ready, I get into work. And that's what works really good for me. But so my sleeping pattern used to be like 5 a.m. And then it was, I'm only going to sleep 5 or 6 hours a night. And what I realized was, I was like, I can really do this. I can do 5 or 6 hours a night, 6 days, and I would actually go if I found that my body really needed a little extra sleep after about 2 weeks. So I'd have one night where I just slept 8 or 9 hours and I could do it again. And because I figured out that if I slept 2 hours less per night than the average person, I would get an entire extra month every year than the average person. I'm like, that's how I'm going to hack results. And then I've sort of come back the other way now. It's like, I don't measure my sleep. I go to bed at a reasonable hour. I wake up when I'm ready. But because I'm well rested and I feel good about it, I don't feel guilty about having 8 hours sleep. I get way more done in my life now than what I ever used to do when I slept 6 hours still. So for me, it's not really so much about the hours you sleep. It's about what you do in the hours you don't sleep. And that's what I really honed in. So I'd love to kind of hear what you think about this, like optimal times to sleep, how do we really sort of maximize our sleep so we wake up well rested?
Yeah, I'm so glad you brought that up and also just highlighted the importance of sleep and also, and not having to feel that you've got to be part of that 5 a.m. club, right? There are a percentage of the population that are early risers naturally. I think the sleep doctor, Dr. Michael Bruce in the US, has done a lot of research into this and categorized people, right? Around 15% or so of the population really are those early morning people. And then we have about the same percentage who are really night owls. The bulk of the population is in that intermediate category. And this is what I found when I've looked at, so many people's DNA results is what I see is there are some early morning types, there are some night owls, and then there's a lot of mixed types, right? And that's your classic, I'm going to go to bed somewhere between 10:30 and 11. I'm going to wake up somewhere between 6:30 and 7. And that works for a ton of people. And I think that when you try to shift yourself into a different extreme category, it can be really difficult. Now, when I was practicing as a lawyer, it didn't matter how early you got into work. You were going to be there late, right? A lot of the work was done between 9, 10 p.m. And 2 a.m. and 3 a.m. and beyond. And that was really hard for me. I think that contributed a lot to my burnout because I'm naturally a very early morning person. And I will wake up somewhere between 4:30 and 5:30 naturally. But that's a small bank, as we were just saying, of the population. And you don't have to get up at that time to be successful. And if you are that type of person, I think you'll know, because if you don't set an alarm, you're still going to wake up, and you're still going to wake up around that time at weekends. And you can do online questionnaires and things to find out your chronotype. You can take a DNA test and have a look. And when we look at genetics, we can see also that most people seem to be within the category of needing somewhere between 7 and 9 hours of sleep a night. Not all people. Some people need less, slightly less than 7 hours, and some people need more than 9 hours. Now, there's a vast difference. Like when you were talking about hacking success there and minimizing sleep, there's a big difference, isn't there, between someone who, say, needs about 6.5 hours and someone who needs 9.5 hours. I mean, that's a 3-hour day difference, huge. But then we've got to look at the quality, as you say, and I think that's so important. We were talking back then about flow states, productivity. You know, I think people only have really somewhere between 4 to 6 high quality hours. It's probably closer to 4. Then the rest of the day, we end up doing things that are a little bit more process driven, if you like. But if we're really looking at peak creativity and where we're on our A game, I think it's a bit shorter. It's probably about 4 to 5 hours. So therefore, it doesn't matter, does it? If you need sleep more, get it. It's so much better for your health. Why do you keep skimping on this when actually it's going to make you better and more successful and more productive? And it's the cornerstone of longevity.
What about mindset? Does mindset play a? Because I remember what I used to do. I'd be like, sleep 6 hours, get up and just mentally push through it. To be like, I can generate energy, I can keep going. Is that good? Like what do you think people can mentally kind of push themselves further than what, or is that really sort of a point where they've got to listen to what their body is trying to tell them? Like, does the mind control the body, or does the body control the mind?
I think it's a bit of both, and I think sometimes we need to understand, because they're interconnected, and sometimes we need to use the body to condition the mind, and vice versa, right? We often think it's all power to the mind. I actually think the body's probably got the upper hand here in terms of what we can do. In terms of like you were saying there around sleep, I think that with sleep, we need to focus on quality. I think that's really key. So don't just focus on, I must go and get 8 or 9 hours because it's going to make me more productive, blah, blah, blah. I think focusing on quality is really key. And I think the people that are conditioning themselves to say, I can generate that energy, I can do less, whether they may have every other area of their life dialed in, right? So if we're looking at that shift protocol, it's quite possible that they are so on it with their nutrition. They practice breath work and meditation every day. We see deep states of relaxation, okay, when we start doing things like breath work and meditation that can compensate for sleep, right? Things like NSDR that you can find on like Yoga Nidra and things on YouTube. These things can really help. I love using like a brain hacking device called Brain Tap for meditation. These can, and I've tracked it with HRV, using ECGs and things, and look at the state of my body. These things can help to compensate for poor sleep. There are certain supplements we can take. There's a huge amount of research behind creatine, for example. We think of that for muscle mass and things like that, but actually it's quite a strong nootropic as well. And it helps compensate for sleep deficits. So I think there's loads of things we can do. We can make sure we're really healthy. We're not exposed to loads of toxins. There's less repair or less demands that we're placing on our bodies such that we maybe don't need as much sleep. When we look at the research, if you start to go below 6 hours, it seems to be risky for health, really quite risky. And if you go over 9 hours, that seems to be risky. Why is that? Maybe those people that need 9+ hours are in a poor state of health. That's difficult to see, right? The average person needs around 7, 8. The more you stress and strain your body, the more sleep it's going to need, whether that's through exercise or through drugs and alcohol, for example. But I think when we're looking, like the middle pillar there is insights. Heart rate variability is a really fantastic way to see how well are you recovering on a daily basis, and what's known as your adaptive reserve, right? When you wake up in the morning, how much have you got in the tank? How well did you recover from yesterday? That's a really important metric, because if you know that reading and you track it over time, you can actually see how your behaviors are affecting your nervous system and whether you've got enough capacity really to support what you're doing. That's one of the things that I do when I'm working with clients.
Is there something we should be doing, like a nighttime routine? Like we talk about morning routines a lot. Wake up, cold shower, gratitude, hit the gym, read, all these sorts of things. Is there something that we can do at nighttime that will allow us to get ready for sleep and to rest properly? Do you have a nighttime routine?
I do. And I think it's almost more important, right, than the morning routine, because it's really the nighttime routine that sets you up for that morning, because it's going to help you sleep a lot better. And also you can begin to prioritize your next day. The first thing I would say is we are more sensitive to light at night than we are in the morning. So if you're waking up, I don't know what it's like in Australia, but in the UK, we have really, really long days at this time of year in July. And then when we get to November, December, we've only got about 8 hours of light. So it can feel really difficult to manage that sleep-wake cycle. But if you expose yourself to blue light in the evening, it doesn't take very much to inhibit that production of melatonin. So actually you need to be very careful with light in the evening. You don't want anything above, like ceiling lights on. Everything should be low level lighting, lamps, and dim lighting, candles, things like that. And also like wearing blue blockers. Some people have like giant TV screens now. There's a lot of blue light coming in. It's very, very stimulating. So managing light would be key, but it all starts with morning. So if you go and get access to early morning light, you will sleep better tonight. That helps regulate that circadian clock. If it's a bright sunny day, it only needs to be 5 minutes. If it's cloudy, maybe a bit more, but you need to try and do that every single day. So like managing that light cycle is going to be critical. With the kind of evening routine, I always think that you need to, what I call cap off your day, right? This is how I like people to do it. And to cap off your day, you first of all, you celebrate your wins. Like, what did I do great? What did I really enjoy about today, right? And then you also celebrate the things you learn, right? There's no failing. What did I learn along the way today? So celebrate the wins, celebrate the key points of learning, and that helps to make you better tomorrow. And then the A is to appreciate the goodness in your life. I actually think it's very powerful to focus on gratitude as an evening practice, because you really kind of feel more at one, you sleep better. There's so much great research around the power of gratitude. And then the P really is about prioritizing tomorrow, because when you look at your priorities for the next day and you set them out and you have written these things down, you've got everything out of your head onto paper, you know that it's all going to be taken care of, right? It's right there. When you wake up in the morning, you'll be able to see it. And so you're going to sleep better. And we have to declutter the mind in order to sleep well.
That's something I've done as well. I'm not too consistent in it, but the days I do write down, at the end of my day, I write down, here's the things I'm going to get done tomorrow. I'm so much more on it. I do, because I used to struggle a lot with when I wasn't working, I'd feel guilty for not working. But then when I was working, I'd feel like, I just want to go to the beach, or I just want to do something. And the problem was, it was because wherever I wasn't fully there. So when I'd be working, I wasn't very productive because I wasn't letting my soul fill up. I wasn't actually having the fun days and time off and all these sorts of things. And one thing I've really implemented in the last probably couple of years was saying, this time, nothing on my diary after 6 o'clock. And I very, 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 very rarely, days an odd occasion, we're just past 6 o'clock here. I'll very rarely do something past 6 if I'm just tidying up something for the day. 7 o'clock, nothing else past that. And what I've noticed when I write it all down, like here's things I get done tomorrow, even if I didn't get it all done today, I feel very good about it. Cause I'm like, hey, I did so much today because I looked at everything that I've crushed today. I get that dopamine feeling. And if I did something that I didn't write down on my list, I'll write it down on my list and then cross it off. So I feel good about it, right? But the days I write down about tomorrow, I'm just so freaking productive and I'm ready because like I feel like I have emptied that tank and I'm not thinking about, but this. And if I do think that later, I'll go write it down. I'm like, cover this tomorrow. And I just know it's there. And then I deal with that tomorrow. And I've really looked at life more now is where we're in a marathon, I can't sprint for the entire way. I've got to have those sort of pullback times and go run a really good lap and then have a good time to rest and all of that. Quickly on the fuel side of things, what are some things that we can be putting in our body? Some things that maybe people don't know about, some foods, supplements. You mentioned nootropics. That's a huge thing for me lately. What are some things that we can be eating or consuming daily that can really fuel our bodies, our brains, so we can achieve optimal results?
So I would say the thing I would say is just remember these 3 Ps, right? Protein, polyphenols, and pro and prebiotics, right? If you can do that. Now, let's break those down. Protein is absolutely critical. It's critical for everything in the body. It's like you're not going to build muscle tissue. You're not going to have all those high quality neurotransmitters that you need, hormones, everything. It's the building block is amino acids, and we need to get that from protein. So there is, if you're someone that's focused on body composition, you want to focus at getting 30 to 50 grams, ideally as a minimum in any one serving, because that is what triggers muscle protein synthesis. You also need a certain amount of leucine, but if you're eating animal-based foods, that's going to be easier to get. But protein is the building blocks of life. And many people don't get enough protein until their evening meal. They kind of have almost nothing at breakfast. They might have a small amount at lunch, and they wonder why they're kind of craving foods and feeling tired. And there's some research that you'll continue to crave things if you aren't getting enough protein, right? The body's sensing that it needs this. It's also has a high thermic effect. So it helps you burn more body fat because it costs you more energy to break it down. And so you don't absorb as many calories from it. So if you're looking at body composition, you're looking at energy and metabolism, then protein is an absolute must. You can work out, it's around overall for the day, it's probably around somewhere between 0.8 and 1 gram per pound of body weight that you need in total, but you want to kind of break it down across the day. The next one is like polyphenols. Where are we going to get these? From plants, basically. Polyphenol rich foods are amazing for your body. So look for things that are bright in color. And really it's about diversity. There's been a lot of research done. Forget focusing on fiber. Think about diversity. How many plants can I get in? And you want to aim for around 30 plus plants a week. And even things like coffee, herbs, spices, these all count towards it, dark chocolate. But you want to get as many as you can in. And they will help with giving you antioxidants, which is important for managing oxidative stress in the body. Polyphenols will be what feeds your healthy gut bacteria. So they feed the health of your microbiome. So they're hugely important. So that diversity, blueberries, for example, 60 to 120 grams of blueberries, really high in polyphenols, amazing for the health of your brain. Extra virgin organic olive oil, these kind of things. You want to have healthy fats alongside this. And if you're having high plant-based foods, you're going to be getting extra fats, things like walnuts, almonds, avocados, all of these. And then if you can work in as part of your protein, some oily fish as well, that's going to be great. So those are the kind of the first two P's. And then the last is the pre and probiotics. So making sure that you're really optimizing your microbiome. Now, the polyphenols are a form of prebiotic, which is prebiotic is what your gut's going to feed off. And probiotics is kind of the seeds that you plant, right? So you're planting the seeds and then you're watering the garden. You don't necessarily have to take a supplement, and there isn't really solid research around take this supplement and it's going to optimize your gut, because we're all kind of very individual. I think the probiotic supplements are getting better, but the key thing is to make sure you're having fermented foods or foods that contain natural sources of probiotics, like Greek yogurt, for example, would be a really easy example of something that people could have. Sauerkraut, kimchi, any of those kind of things are really good as well. But those would be the key pillars that I would look to hit first.
I love it. Angela, this has been so knowledgeable and so much freaking information. We might need to run round 2, but I know you're tight for time today. So where can everybody find you and check out everything that you've got?
Thank you. And thanks for having me on. I'd love to come back. So you can find me on Instagram. It's Angela S. Foster. That's where I share a lot of content on there. My podcast is High Performance Health. We do 2 episodes every single week. So there's lots on there. And then if you want to kind of get an idea on where you are and dive a bit deeper onto this shift protocol, you can take our free biohacking quiz and we'll send you a personalized report. And that's over at yourtotalhealthcheck.com.
Love it. Beautiful. All right. To wrap this up, I've got a final question for you. Are you ready?
Okay, I'm ready.
If you were to go back to your 18-year-old self and give her 30 seconds of advice, what would it be?
It would be to connect with what you really want, as opposed to what you think you should be doing. I think that I followed a career path initially that really, I don't get me wrong, I had a lot of fun as a lawyer, but it wasn't ultimately where I wanted to spend my time. Now I feel like I never work because I do what I truly love. And if I was to go back to my 18-year-old self, I would say, find what you truly love and follow that.
Thank you so much for listening. And if you got value from this episode, it goes such a long way. If you can just take 20 seconds of your time, leave me a 5-star rating and written review, then screenshot this episode and share it to your story. And make sure you tag me for that shout out. And until next time, guys, go out there and dream out loud.